Hi, Jonathan. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. This is
Yeah.
going to be such an awesome time. I just wanted to learn so much about what you've done and how you did it. Please take me back to, when everything started, when you were in college. I'd love to hear how you transformatively entered into your collegiate career and how that changed your ultimate trajectory to then go into consulting.
Well, that's a big question.
I will, right?
I will try to take it in bite-sized chunks.
Yeah,
but
do that. Go for it.
I start off my career, obviously I start off in school at UCSD in chemical engineering. I did an internship, my junior year, and I cried. And said, there's no way I'm going into chemical engineering. I didn't want to work 9 to 5.
I get it.
It was just not what I wanted to do, and the work was just not that fun. But I actually loved the major, which was actually very funny.
You found it fascinating, but ultimately it just wasn't because it can be very hard. I know. I was in medicine.
Yeah.
And, originally I was like, this is great. I love it. The idea is nice. But then in actual practice, it's just, I didn't feel like I was doing what I could do, right, to really help people in the way that I felt I could best do it.
Similar, it just felt like it wasn't a fun. I mean, I like to be around people. I'm very much an extrovert. It wasn't a job for an extrovert.
Got it.
And so at least the internship that I had, and again, your first experience sometimes is can be the last one, right? So I ended up then getting an internship with Accenture, and at the time it was Anderson Consulting. And it was the best internship probably anyone could ask. I mean, at the time, they flew us in helicopters. They took us to dinner regularly.
Well, they flew you in helicopters.
They did.
That's
they
cool.
Did. They took
That's
us
a wine and dine. That's a
helicopter ride around LA, and it was just, we did all these really fun events. I said, these are the people I want to hang out with, and I really just enjoyed myself. The work was challenging. I had a hard time getting up at 6 a.m. for meetings.
We all do.
But I mean, when you're 21,
right.
It's a little bit harder for some reason, especially when you're in college. But whatever, I learned and I did it. Then eventually, when I graduated, I ended up working for Accenture full time.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So take me in a day at Accenture, during your tenure there or the time that you had. I'd love to know, what did you do? How did you impact people's lives?
Oh, I love that. I loved working at Accenture. It was a great company. I was there for 5 years. I ended up being part of their financial services practice, so meaning I was working with a lot of banks and insurance companies.
Right.
And I learned quite a bit. I learned a lot from executives, both on the client side and on the Accenture side. They taught me how to sell, right? And the idea of always be thinking about what other people are thinking about and what's important to them, right? And it's not about what you're trying to get across. It's not the message that you're trying to get across. It's the message that, what's important to them. How are you going to help solve their biggest problems?
Right.
And so that was a big thing to learn when you're in your early 20s, and having the opportunity to help them then solve some of their biggest problems. Executives solve their biggest problems was really something that I really enjoyed, and so. Ultimately, though, the mortgage, industry was taking off. I had worked on a Washington Mutual project for a couple of years at that point.
And that was at Accenture still?
That was at Accenture.
Okay,
so Washington Mutual was our client.
Got it.
And I said, you know what, let me see what the mortgage industry looks like. And I ended up applying to a role within Countrywide Financial.
Did you get your NMLS, or was it oriented? It was different.
I was working on. I wanted to work corporate. There was no way I was.
Got it. I get it.
I wasn't trying to be a broker.
No, everybody tries to be a broker at one point. It's for some people, but a lot of people, it's like there's so many other roles, right? And maybe there's more interesting or fascinating things that you found. So,
I love. I mean, I do. I still love how companies work and the inner workings of companies. That is just something that fascinates me, and how decisions are made and the strategy level.
Right.
Those are the things that I like to do. So the strategy piece was really what I was focused on.
That's really cool.
I ended up working with the IT strategy group at the time. Then eventually went to go work for wholesale lending as their VP of strategic planning and intelligence.
So
within
walk me
Countrywide.
through that. So wholesale lending, what would that entail, just for the viewers out there?
So wholesale lending does entail working with brokers or third party, help provide a mortgage rate and also ultimately the mortgage for any homeowner. It was on the residential side, so or any soon-to-be homeowner. And eventually, what we were accused of, the wholesale lending division, and this is during the 2008 crisis, we were accused of little old ladies signing in the dark.
Oh, God.
And, there are all sorts of things. At the same time, it's really hard because if you are working with the broker, you're ultimately not working with the customer.
Right.
Right? And so then there became a moment of, well, how do we ensure accountability, right, on the broker side, that they're doing the right things and that they are, working in good faith, right? So that was a really hard decision. In fact, Bank of America, when they ended up buying us, they actually decided that was something that was a risk they didn't want to take. So,
so they sold a portion of the division, or like they scrapped it? What do they?
Their goal was to not have a third-party lending group at all.
Yeah.
Because
So
of
then they would
the
associate all
risk
the
associated with that. I think they've changed their mind. I don't know how that works. I haven't followed them, to be honest.
Got it.
On that, but I do think they came around to not fully getting rid of that because they realize there's always some element that is going to work in that field, right? And that's a whole industry of people that have knowledge. And that there probably were quite a few people doing the right thing. It's just unfortunate there were a few people doing the wrong thing.
And that's really sad. I mean, that's why 2008 happened. It's a very tough thing to have seen happen. But I think now that we have these regulations in place, it's completely changed the industry, and it's allowed us not to have that type of predatory lending. So, at the end of the day, it's great because I knew some people, they were doing ninja loans. Like, I wasn't in the industry at the time; I was too young. But I've heard of it and what they did, and it was just it didn't sit right.
Yeah, there's something called the Nina loan, which is the no income, no assets.
Oh.
There's something called the CISA loan, stated income, stated assets. Those were loans, and honestly, all the banks were doing it. So it wasn't just Countrywide. Countrywide, we had a great PR team. Angelo Mozilla was great at being the face of the company. He wasn't necessarily always the leader, though. He was a fast follower in many ways. But because he was so good at marketing himself, he became the face. So, in some ways, he was a victim of his own success.
Right. So I want to talk about your transition actually as well to B of A, because I guess it was through an acquisition. Is that correct?
That is exactly right. And that was my first taste when I was working at Countrywide, right? So I was working on the wholesale lending group. Found out that I was working on a transaction before I even knew we were doing the transaction. I didn't even know it.
And you didn't know they kept you
my boss. Well, my boss was saying, make sure you upload this. I'm like, why are we uploading that? That's from like 2 years ago.
Right.
And so, we were going through the whole thing.
That's how they do it. With these groups, they make sure nobody knows, so then there's no issues of conflict of interest.
It was it was so powerful. It was so powerful to be part of that and not know you're part of it until later. But I also had worked on some of the layoffs and things like that. So I had worked on a few things where I also had to be secretive on some of the things that we were doing. So we did a series of layoffs in the wholesale lending group even before we were bought.
And these are just residential mortgages, right? So when you're saying
just
wholesaling, it's just like, is it the process of having a third-party lender involved in that sale
Well, we
transaction?
were a lender.
Yeah,
right.
But you also would utilize third parties?
That's more of correspondent lending, but wholesale lending just has a broker, which is saying we're going to shop around
got it.
your rate with other
it's brokerage
mortgage lenders like yours.
Yeah.
And then someone chooses the best rate, right?
Yeah.
And so, they give you the risk profile and all those things. But anyways, then I ended up working on that deal. It was amazing. Helped out with the integration, or post-merger integration. And then at some point it was like, well, what are you going to do next? Because at some point that's going to end. So, what's your journey going to look like?
Right.
So, given the idea of survival, I said, okay, right, I'm going to start applying to different roles within Bank of America. I actually thought it was a good opportunity to work within a large corporation just to see. I'm
Get
like,
that in.
I came
I
from
know
a
what
very
you mean.
positive place, thinking, wow, this is amazing. What I didn't realize is that when you are a large corporation, you have to have people in boxes.
Yes.
Otherwise, it gets unruly.
I know that all too well.
Right.
It's the age-old story of you need to fit here, you need to be able to fit this cog and do this and run this wheel. And of course you can move forward and move up, but that's all based on relationships that you build. It's not based upon your innate ability, and nobody's going to try to find that innate ability. You have to find it for yourself, which is what you were doing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, you have to swim in the lane.
yeah. With the
So,
sharks. Sharks in the lake, even though they don't exist in lakes, they're in this one.
I don't know. So anyway, so it is what it is. So then, at some point I found a role that was on the East Coast, and working again, VP strategy role, VP change management role.
Yeah, I saw that. I was very intrigued by that. But I kind of wanted to focus first, like, how did you transition into like asset management, portfolio management, right? Because that was like the primary transition. Was it or no? Like, I might have read your CV wrong.
When I was enterprise portfolio. So IT enterprise portfolio management was what I was doing before I was VP of strategic planning and intelligence. And what that meant was I was working with, and we had a bunch of disparate divisions, right? And so everybody had their own IT group, right? So they weren't working together. So the question was, how do we get some sense of synergies across all the IT groups? Well, that was my organization that I was a part of, right? And our goal was to help the enterprise be successful and to help them leverage each other, right? And come up with standards and routines and best practices.
And this is all within the IT group of Bank of America.
Well, multiple IT groups of Countrywide Financial.
This is before.
This is before.
And then when you transitioned to Bank of America, tell me how that transition happened. Okay.
At that point, I had been working within the integration, on the integration team for quite a while.
Okay.
And part of integration, if you're successful, means that you've looked at a lot of change management and you understand what it takes for the people side of the house to get things done. And so when I came into Bank of America, they had hired me to continue working on other integrations and other deals, to be honest. The things that were kind of in the works, but not fully in the works, or at least exploring. And so they had me working on things like that for a little while, and then I decided I would go into a more in-depth M&A role, in which case...
How did that transition take place?
Well, I started applying to Deloitte Consulting. I found a friend of mine gave me an opportunity.
But how did you know M&A was for you? Like, was it just you made... Because I know you went to do your MBA, right?
I got my MBA while I was at Countrywide Financial.
Got it.
So that was actually, that was a large part of my experience too, because I was getting my MBA while also in school, and even I was writing. We had to write dissertations, right?
Okay. Yes.
And group dissertations, right? And so I was in the middle of my dissertation while the crisis was happening.
Wow.
So it was like 3 hours sleep, probably for a good 2 to 3 months, and it was really stressful.
I could imagine.
And you can imagine on no sleep, you're just kind of dying.
What was your dissertation about?
At the time we were working with a company in Italy. They are a construction company, and we're helping them to identify ways that they could garner more business within Italy.
Oh, I like that.
So it was actually originally supposed to be in Africa, but they decided to kill that.
So it was emerging market oriented, and then they went like, okay, let's go first world country.
But then it was like they were already in Italy. We're telling them how to do business in Italy. So for us, it just ended up being a fun project.
Yeah, I get it.
But we had to still write something up and do the whole thing. But
how did they get involved with the university?
They pay a fee, a small fee to the university, and then the university just has they stick 5 excited MBA students onto the project, and then it just
right.
go.
That's great. I mean, that's a good way to do it. I mean, like, I didn't know that they would actually pay. I figured it was probably something that was free, but
no. I mean, it's still ideas, right? It's still concepts, and we're being guided by an advisor.
Okay, you're being guided by an advisor. Okay, now it makes.
It wasn't it wasn't that we were just coming up with these ideas on our own.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was guiding by an advisor within the group, and that makes a lot more sense now that there was that oversight. You know, they're paying the professors. Yeah.
In a pretty reputable school. At the time, we were number one. We were the number one part-time program in all of the U.S.
Wow, that's awesome.
So,
Anderson, there you go.
Yeah, UCLA Anderson, there you go. But yeah, so then, going back to, so at that point, I knew M&A existed. I didn't know if it was for me or not until I started working on the countrywide Bank of America transaction. And then when I started getting a taste of it while still working with Bank of America, I was like, oh, there's so many, this is what people can do for a living. I'm like, what does that look like?
Right.
And so I said, look, I still want to do, strategy was always my thing. Like basically I was always working strategy from the time that I pretty much started with Accenture. Although I was not in the strategy group, I was in the process group, but I was still doing strategic projects. So explain that one.
But I mean, it's similar. It is strategy to create processes.
It was
very similar,
but it was very interesting.
Yeah.
But to that point, a lot of the stuff that we were doing ended up eventually leading me to the idea of that I could work with a large consulting firm again, and potentially be involved with M&A transactions, and Deloitte gave me that opportunity. I was very excited.
How did it feel interviewing for that position? Because I bet it was a big change for you, to go right into M&A. I mean, even though you had strategy roles before, this is a completely different, role, and it's oriented at a, top, big three, top four firm.
Deloitte Consulting was a little, the interview process was fun and intimidating. I think I did well on the case study. But when it came down to the next part of the interview, one of the partners looked at me and said, well, what do you want to do? He said, tell me who you are and how you got here and where you want to go. Like, who do you want to be? And he just, let me answer. And he looked at me, he's like, that is not who you are. It was just I was like, what do you mean? He proceeded to tell me who I am. And I was like,
wait, does he know you?
I was like, yes, that's who I am.
Oh, well, that's good.
It was like he described me in such a way that I was like, wow. Mm-hmm. Like he took my story and really just in a heartfelt way.
That was like a moment of grooming, who I was, right? It was almost like grooming you to tell you, you know what, I can understand that this is the path that you want to take, and I will help you get there, but we need to first know it to be able to execute.
And then he asked me, he's like, how long do I have you for?
I like that, too.
I was like, I don't know. Let's see where the path takes us. And I think I may have said a few years. He goes, well, give us at least 2 years and we'll figure it out. And I was like, okay. So that's what that looked like.
Tell me more about Deloitte and how your career trajectory changed from going to Deloitte.
So then Deloitte gave me an opportunity to work on some, intense strategy projects again. So strategy was really my thing, and I liked M&A, and I was hoping to do more M&A stuff. And then they gave me an opportunity to work on something called TSAs, which are transaction service agreements. That was just an amazing opportunity to work on that. Became a little bit more of an expert in that area. Also had a chance to lead some teams. Lead some groups, I should say.
What were you guys focused on?
Within the TSA and part of the M&A world. So that was actually very exciting. Transactions that I worked on were as large as $3.3 billion. So that was, to me, that was pretty amazing. I'm sure there's probably larger deals out there, but for me, that was...
No, that's large enough. You don't need, especially at the time,
that was large.
Too,
You're right.
At the time, it was a lot of money.
But $3.3 billion was a lot of money in 2011.
That's
right?
a lot of money
That's a lot of money.
Time. Yeah.
So you're right. So anyways, had a chance to work with some large corporations on their transactions, like HSBC. At the time, Ralcorp Foods, I think is owned by Treehouse now. Mm-hmm. Quite a few different transactions. And I said, wow, I really like this. How can I go deeper in this? Then ended up, then decided, okay, I'm going to, shoot my shot at another role, in strategy and M&A. And I ended up going to work for Grant Thornton.
Oh,
so did that for about 2.5 years as well. And then I said, look, I was overconfident on the work that I could sell. because you're selling $2 million of work, right? Which isn't really a lot of money, but it was, for me, it was like a good amount of work. At a consulting firm doesn't mean that you can sell it on your own.
Right.
I was like, oh, if I can sell a couple $1 million of work on my own.
Tell me about that. I want to hear what the difference is and how you feel that it can be different trying to build that many hours or trying to provide that amount of value, right? The value that you provide is the same. It's just the name, pedigree.
It's 100% brand. It is about the brand.
Got it.
There's so much inbound that comes to you that you can filter through, that you have an opportunity to really pursue. Also, you can actually use the brand to get you in a door too. And there's that. And there's also team members that are on the sales teams that can really help you really figure that out, right? So there's so much help and assistance that can work with you on trying to get to the next level that it ends up being an amazing experience when you're selling with a large company, as opposed to when you're by yourself. You don't have quite that same engine behind you, so it's a little different.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people who start businesses, it's this pathway where people don't understand the first 2 years is selling. That's all you're doing is building your brand, selling, trying to create value, and trying to get known to be able to provide that value. Since starting your own firm, how did you do that? What did that process look like for you?
I don't think it's just the 2 years.
I know, but I'm just saying,
I think you're always selling.
You're always selling, but what did you do for the first 2 years? Because a lot of people out there, they're like, okay, I'm still in it. I'm starting out. I want to know, what it takes, and I want to know all the hard stuff. Tell it to me straight.
Well, I do think the difference is when I first started, I worked almost every single day. I would go to the office almost every day, Saturday and Sunday included.
Nice.
And that was when I first started. Now I'm trying to see, okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But there are moments where, you're tempted to go to the office every day too. But you have to really realize, okay, what is the right scenario for my company and for me? And also, what example am I creating for, the people that work for me or work with me?
Building relationships. That's something very important in business, and being able to consistently provide a certain amount of value. You need to be able to build those relationships.
Yeah.
How have you cultivated your relationships over time?
A lot of it is from past relationships, business school, or I should say schools in general, and ultimately the people that I meet at different events, networking events. But also, keep in mind, if you're involved in your community or volunteer work of any kind, you meet a lot of great people. Of course, you want to be cognizant of where you put your energy, right? So you can meet a lot of great people at the same time. If you're building a business, it's ideal that you meet a bunch of great people who are also like-minded in the sense that they're trying to build something also. And then it just makes your life a lot more seamless. Right. But you can meet a lot of great people doing whatever. Right.
That's really cool. I like that, because you gave kind of a three-pronged approach there, which is very helpful, because a lot of people, a lot of the time, they think, I just go to a bunch of networking events and I'll be fine. No, it's those relationships that you built over a long period of time, their spheres of influence, the sphere of influence that you have throughout your time at, scholastically, maybe even your professors, then your business experience, work experience, right, which really culminates after years and years and years of hard work and dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people say they want to start a company after maybe working for a company for 2 years. It's a lot more difficult when you don't have that network.
100%.
But you can do it. Right?
I know, I'm doing it.
Right.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's very hard, I have to tell you. But one of the things that's beautiful about it is you learn so much by throwing yourself off the deep end, as we talked about earlier. When you did that, what was the change for you mentally? What was the change for you, spiritually, if you want to talk about that? How did that change impact you, and how did you go along with that change?
It's, I don't know, you go through different moments, right? It's not like you have one moment that says, this is what it's like, I've arrived. It depends. It's funny because I was talking to one of my new business coaches now, and she asked me the question of, go back to a time when you felt fulfilled, like a time period in your life when you felt fulfilled. And I was realizing, like, I don't know if there's a time period where I've ever felt fulfilled, but I do think I've had moments that were fulfilling, right? So it's like, I just don't know if that's in my how. And maybe that's something I need to change. I don't know.
I mean, I think it keeps you motivated. I agree with you because that fleeting moment of fulfillment is not the goal. The goal is to do the grind every single day to get to that moment, right? Yeah. And a lot of people who are ultra successful work very hard and create value. They realize it's all in the grind. It has nothing to do with that fleeting moment, and we don't even aspire to get to that moment. We aspire to do the grind because otherwise we're not going to be happy because that's 99.999% of it. And it's the best feeling in the world. Like I remember, like I played tennis when I was younger, right? And I still play tennis all the time. Love tennis. And
I love to watch tennis.
You like to watch tennis?
I play. I'm just not very good.
That's not important. It's about the enjoyment while you're doing it, right? Yeah. So basically, what happened a lot of the time, I would win a tournament, right? And I wouldn't feel any sort of enjoyment. Like, you know, maybe the point that I win the point, I'm like so happy that match point, and then it all goes away, and then you're like, I need to train, I need to rest, I need to continue.
Right.
And you know, I think that's a good analogy as to what you're saying. I think like we never feel fulfilled. That's why we continue to strive to become better versions of ourselves.
Great.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, well stated. I think that's exactly how I feel. It's like, what's next, right? And what am I working on? What are the areas where improvements needed, right? And
so tell me about those. I want to hear about those.
Oh, well, I don't know.
not areas where you need improvement. not that. I mean, like, tell me about what you're working on currently. I heard you say that. Maybe.
I'm happy to be vulnerable, but there's a moment where I'm still being vulnerable with myself.
No. I mean, like, sorry, I feel like I'm grilling you. No,
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's
oh man,
I will opt in. I will opt in.
No, like what I mean is like, tell me about the stuff that you're currently working on. I'd love to hear about some of your current projects or recent projects in the past couple of years after starting your firm.
It's easier for me to talk about recent projects as opposed to me talking about projects that I'm currently working on.
Right, got it, because they're confidential.
They're confidential. But I've worked on a couple of sizable opportunities. One was we helped sell an electric vehicle company that was, they were like a $15 million company, and 15 million, sorry, revenue-wise. And
that's revenue.
Yeah, so revenue. So
okay,
yeah,
got it.
But what's interesting about them is that they ended up increasing their EBITDA while we were working with them, and we kept giving them ideas around ways that they could grow their revenue, and it worked. And they were just like, we don't know what's happening. But
could you give me one small example? It doesn't need to be, you don't need to tell me.
It was unique to their company and their strategy, but it was working.
Got it.
So that was something that we were able to help with that was meaningful at the same time. They were an electric vehicle company that, they did B2B business, which that's what I love
to do. So like
to
trucking, or would it be more oriented towards like commercial?
So they were utility vehicles.
Okay.
And they really had 3 different customer types, which were universities, the government.
The best client.
And then actually they were a great client for them. And they did really well. And the government pays on time. They, I mean,
that's why they're the best client.
For them, at least for them. So I can't say that that's maybe all the case for everybody else.
From what I've seen over time, I'm not saying that it's, always the best, but a lot of the time the government pays, the government has money, and the government will,
Yeah. So they'll follow through. But then there's also the other side of it too, where they ended up working with large companies that had large campuses.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was, because these were cars that couldn't go on a freeway.
Yeah.
And they only went up to like 45 miles per hour.
Yeah, like a utility service vehicle where you go around, maintenance guy, that, or the other thing.
So they started selling at golf courses too. But that wasn't really their main bread and butter. But still,
it's harder to scale because they do need a lot, but it's just like you need to it's different relationships. With one relationship with one university, that's a much larger client, right?
If you're a small company, you do have to decide where you're going to play, right? And that was their decision, right? But yeah, ultimately, that was just a fun company to work with. It was unfortunate the owner had some personal challenges, which is why we ended up wanting to sell the company. But yeah, he was just a smart guy.
How did he get into it? Do you know his like founder story type thing? Or?
Oh, I don't recall anymore. I know he told me it, but I just don't recall.
It's a lot. It's a lot. We work with a lot of different
in the middle of due
people
diligence, in the middle of integration. I mean, you are listening to people's stories, but you're not. It's not always a focal point.
You're focused on the stuff to make sure nothing shits the bed and they get as much money as they can from their firm and also improve their firm.
Well, you also want to make sure that they aren't burning themselves, right? Because your job is to alleviate them of all the stresses related to the deal as much as possible. That is your number one job, is to manage the transaction and take care of the things that as much as you possibly can without getting the owner involved or the seller involved.
That's really cool. Right. I mean, one of the things that I really love.
Not everybody feels that way, by the way. Not all bankers feel that way.
Oh, you mean
so? Okay. But that's my personal belief, and that's the company.
There's always high performers, right? And those high performers, in my opinion, what makes a high performer is somebody who cares, right? Because ultimately, if you don't care, yes, you can provide a strong service, but there's not going to be a good rapport, with both parties. And the rapport is the most important thing. Yeah. I would say that everybody would rather have a better rapport and have a more smooth and easy process than maximizing every single cent, right? If it's like, okay, I didn't make, X percentage more, but I had a little bit more rapport, I would prefer that, because the amount of stress is what it takes a toll on you, on your business, and it might actually inhibit your ability to get more in reality. So having a more smooth transaction, ultimately, most of the time, you're actually going to make more money.
Hopefully.
you would hope.
I mean, at the end of the day, really, M&A is not as much of a finance transaction you think it is. It's really about people. And that's one of the greatest things about it, is that you are impacting lives. From a seller standpoint, you're helping them realize an amount of money that might change their life and future generations of their family's life, which to see that happen in real time is really meaningful. And almost, you almost kind of start tearing up at some point. I mean, yes, it's great for you to get your fee, but it's not really about that. You're really making an impactful change, helping them keep their legacy, right? There's a lot of things that are with that, right? So, I don't know, I really enjoy the meaning behind M&A.
That's really cool. Tell me about a time that you've taken an individual from start to finish, right? What you did, generals. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to give details, but I want to, strong details, like that might be confidential, anything that's public information, love to hear that. What I want to know, though, is from start to finish, like when you inserted or when you were inserted into the firm, right? And how you took that firm from what they were doing to ultimately selling. Because I know that you don't just come in immediately when they're looking to sell and then put the firm on market on biz buy sell or something like that. And there's a lot more to it. You were talking about actually impacting firms' EBITDA. So by doing that and taking them through the process and ultimately maybe doing a 1 to 2 year, maybe even a 6 month process with them, right? 6 months to 2 years, helping them get to, strongest revenue, helping them create and craft their story to ultimately sell to larger firms and get acquired. Yeah. I want to hear that process because I find that fascinating, and I've never heard it from somebody, who has your experience. So I want to hear that.
It's not always, each situation's very different, very unique. We also had I shouldn't say large, but for us, it was a small company, but, they were, under 50 million in revenue, but they were, really sizable. And they were an ed tech company.
Okay.
We were brought in because they had gotten an offer from a larger organization. And they weren't sure if they wanted to take that if they wanted to take the deal or not. And then the thought was, well, do they want to sell anyways? So we went into an M&A exploration kind of project. So the first thing was, let's look at what the offer is. Is this real, first of all, because it was life-changing. Ultimately, what we decided was that we were going to go to market, while we were negotiating that offer and just see what other opportunities came around. We ended up getting 6 other offers. They were all lower than the original offer on the table. We ended up going with the lower offers because the idea of working with that larger organization was against their values.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, they didn't share the same values, right?
No,
because it's not about, that's why, going back to the whole thing, it's not about the money. Sometimes it's mostly about the people, right? Because you want to make sure these people that you know for 10, 15 years in some cases, maybe even if it's a year.
They helped you build
they
that
still, they're still, you see them on a daily basis. You are literally feeding their families.
Right.
And all of a sudden to say, yeah, I'm going to take mine and leave and you're on your own. Really, that's not something that a lot of owners do. If they do that, it must have been a lot of money.
Right.
So,
okay.
and I couldn't even imagine a scenario where an owner would really do that without feeling awful. I don't know that mentally.
But because in both situations, they're making life-changing money. It's just in one situation, you're making a little bit more, but then you're also selling to a larger firm that might, dissolve the company, or they might reduce workforce by 10, 20% and improve operating margins.
Right.
Like, that's what you're talking
There's
about.
a lot there. The people were nice when you talk to them on the phone, but it happened to be a larger company, and you could read online all about what they were truly about and how they operated, and and the customer reviews and everything else. So it just ended up being a little different. But the process. Ultimately, when we got the offers, it was great. We decided to take one of them. We negotiated the heck out of that offer. Ultimately, we did a 3-month due diligence process. The harder part for the sellers was to see the change in the money, right? Because when you look at reasonable working capital, the question is, what does that look like? What does that look like to a buyer, and what does that look like to a seller? Well, it's all the eye of the beholder, right? And so that's the part where the negotiation part comes into play. And they end up getting a good, they still end up walking with quite a sizable amount of money. But that was part of the negotiation process. The purchase agreement itself, developing that, negotiating that, was difficult. But yeah, ultimately, people were able to retire. And some people were able to move up in the company and help the company still live on. So
I really like that.
it's again, very meaningful, exciting work.
I think that was an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it, because everybody out there, I bet, has also had that question in regards to being able to understand what that process is like. Because people have businesses, and a lot of people are afraid. They don't want to let them go. They love their business. They're so happy. They've worked hard. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work. They've built this thing over years. It's been tough. They've had, sleepless nights, the whole works, right? But by understanding that when you sell, your company stays intact, and it is your company still. Maybe you were held on and retained for 2-3 years on a salary basis to be able to consult or to continue working as CEO or whatever position you held. Maybe your equity partners also were able to too. It's like, that's the type of situations that you're talking about, to try to provide somebody and eke more value in different ways. Maybe they own the real estate and then they do a lease back and it's favorable, so maybe they sell at a discount.
Agreed.
Right? There's so many ways to provide value that aren't necessarily tied to $1 number. And I think a lot of people get stuck on $1 number sometimes. Does that happen?
A lot of companies, a lot of the
People.
sellers,
Right.
I'm going to say the people do. The sellers do. They're stuck on, I believe my company's worth this. And a lot of times you'll get sellers come to you and say, look, I believe my company's worth this and I want to sell it for that. Can you help me? And I'll say, well, let me do the valuation first. And they'll say, well, I know what it's worth. And it's like, well, it's like an art, like looking at a piece of art. Sometimes you may think that's $1 million piece, but it's not $1 million piece until someone's willing to pay $1 million for it.
Right. I agree with what you're saying completely. That segues into my next question for you. How do you handle those types of situations when a seller says, you know what, I believe that my business is valued at X, and they don't really, discuss it? Like, is it sometime, what do you do in that situation?
Sometimes you have to lean in. And, what I've learned is, let's test the marketplace is probably the best option in order to be able to help people understand what their business is truly worth. And testing the marketplace really just means, let's take a look at what other people say your business is worth, right? And, you thought your business was worth, $3 million and someone's willing to give you $1 million. That's probably not what you wanted to hear, but,
right. You're still giving them an offer. You're giving them something that's
well,
tangible.
They're getting something tangible. They may not want that, so they may walk away, or choose to keep or take their business off the market and choose to build it up some more. As much as people would love $1 million, I don't think that you want to get rid of your dream for $1 million. Some people.
No, I 100% agree with what you're saying. How do you help somebody along through this process, right? As you're at times you're kind of like a guider, like a shepherd, right? Mm-hmm. A portion of your job, a large portion, is helping people deal with these passes of legacy, passing on legacy to maybe a different generation in a different format, because they have a different idea of what they want to do with their lives and not work on this business that's been there for a long time. So how do you handle those inner dynamics when working with individuals?
Well, I mean, it's more of so we have pretty good frameworks, both on the buy side and the sell side. With that said, with our frameworks, we have tools, templates, and a little bit of the how. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm working on a book about that.
Oh, really?
For later on this year. It's coming out, hopefully.
Wait, but can you give the title or not yet? No title.
Well, there's no title right now.
Okay.
But it's an M&A book, and we're like chapter 10, I think, right now.
I love that. Are you building it with a couple other colleagues, or is this just a pet project you've been working on for a long time?
Yeah, so with my publisher. It'll be good, hopefully.
I look forward to that. You know what? We should have you back on, and then I'll
we can talk about the book.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah. I would love to do that. Yeah, I wanted to talk about some of your charitable work and also your work with organizations outside of M&A, right? So you work with the city as well. I'd love to hear about that and your impact and how that's impacted you over time.
Yeah, it's great. I think there's something to be said about really getting into the weeds of the community that you're working with and getting in the heads of the people. And at the end of the day, I think people just want to be able to come home to a safe place, and a place where they can call home and feel like they can, I don't know if everyone wants to know their neighbor, but I feel like there are quite a few people that just want to know that they're in like-minded company. They can look at you and say, okay, I feel comfortable.
So how did you get involved with, you're involved with the city of West Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
So how did you do that? How did that all look? How many years have you been with them? Love to hear.
Well, in 2020, I think we all experienced the George Floyd, and I looked at all the different, I said, what can I do to be involved with the city? And they said, well, here's a list of different, advisory boards you can be part of. I'm like, why don't we have something that focuses on Black and brown people? One of the council members, so I sent a note to all the council members, and several of them replied, not all of them replied, but several of them replied to me. One said, look, we're really looking to launch something, he said, we're really looking to bring on people for the social justice task force. And I said, okay, what is that focused on? He goes, well, that's really gonna be focused on BIPOC people and what we can do in the city to encourage that. And that's something I can get behind.
That's really cool.
And so I started getting involved with the task force. I became an advisory board. I was a chair of the task force. I became the chair of the advisory board. And then I started also just getting involved with different things with the city, like helping them with their strategic planning process, at their 40-year anniversary, working with their business development group, helping them really think through some of their strategic elements. And so I just started doing that kind of one-off. I started to get a sense of how the city works and how cities work in general, but I do feel like I understand a little bit more around the city, and I really do like the people. But yeah, that's just something, I've been exploring whether or not it makes sense for me to have a bigger role in the city. And that's something I've been exploring. Is that something I really want to do or not? I just don't know if I hear my voice. And I will gladly admit that I voted for the people on city council, but I will say, gladly admit that I voted for a lot of them. At the same time, I also feel like there's more voices to be heard, and there's more innovative ideas that just are not coming to the forefront.
Right.
I don't know quite what that looks like, and I don't know the barriers to implementing those.
So, okay.
Which is the thing that I keep asking, but I don't even hear them even asking the right questions sometimes.
It's important to be inquisitive,
So it is curiosity that
and I think that's really cool that that's something that you explored. You found a passion for helping the city and being involved with your community.
Yeah.
And I think that's really excellent. That's why I wanted to talk about it a little bit with you, because I figured that, doing that, it takes a lot of time out of your day and out of the creation that you're trying to do for your business. And then at the same time, you're trying to help the community. So I feel like that's really awesome. What other volunteering do you do? Is there other pet fun things you like to do, on your time off?
Oh, I've done a lot of things. Right now I'm definitely taking a little bit of a break from. I used to be involved with so many different things, and now it's just you got to decide. You got to pick a few things. Yeah. Pick a few things and do them well. Mm-hmm. The younger me wasn't satisfied with working on only a couple of things. I had to have multiple things because I was
know what you mean.
I needed to do. I needed to do. And so that was it was a different, it's a different version of yourself. Mm-hmm. And so now I have that same anxiety sometimes, but I'm like, calm it down.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I really enjoyed this. I need to have you come back when you have your book.
I'd love that.
All ears open. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Peace.
Thank you.